Thank you, Ted Scott. Thank you for having me here. I got associated more with this group at the Anatolia Festival, which is in Costa Mesa, and I was proud to go ahead and make that Anatolia Day in Costa Mesa. As I said, there's not many things I can do. I can't even fix your parking ticket, but I can at least name a day for you in Costa Mesa. So we did that. And then we've been talking back and forth. There's also another connection that the shopping center that I own over in Fountain Valley, Istanbul Grill opened up in. And a very good tenant. I'm very happy. Anyway, you know, I got involved in politics a long time ago. I'm looking at Devin Dwyer over here. Devin and I go back longer than we want to admit. I know I had all my hair on my head, and he was all dark hair at the time. But we were young Republicans, and we thought we could change the world, and we'd be involved in all sorts of things. And a lot of the things that we went to do didn't pan out. We looked at government, and we looked at some of the issues that we have today, and just said, if things keep on going this way, we're going to have a problem. We didn't win on those issues, and things kept on going the way they are where we're at today. So whether it's the federal government or your local government, kind of the big picture, I mean, and I'm going to give you some of the rough parts that we have to work on, and there's a way out of this in the end. I mean, so there's a good story at the end here. But we're in a society that continues to want to have whatever it wants to have and does not want to pay for it. So we love all the services we get. We love all the unfunded liabilities. Another good friend walking in there. Good to see you. We love all the goodies, whether it's the federal government or the local government, and nobody wants to be the adult anymore to say no, that you can't have this anymore, and you have to start paying for it. And whether it's Wall Street or just your in a pension plan, some friendly fiduciary actuarial who tells you, oh, don't worry, you're putting enough money in the bank to take care of your employees. We simply haven't. So well, I got involved when I ran for city council. I was on the planning commission, and I'd run a couple before I got elected one time, and I lost. But and just get through. And being who I am, keep my mouth shut was pretty hard. Because once you know how the sausage is made, once you're up close, whether you're on a planning commission or whatever, you just can't let things continue to go on. So in politics, what happens, you have too many people that just want to be elected. They want to be in office. And there's ways of doing it. Just don't upset a lot of people. It would have been easy for me just to work with the public employee groups, and they're all fine people, especially the police and fire, and just say, hey, everything's great. We love our police, we love our fire, and everything's perfect. Or say the truth. The fact is we love them, but their pension plan is absolutely unsustainable. I mean, to a level that people have no idea. Now, understand, my little brother, he's 50-something now. He's a police officer, and he puts on a bulletproof vest every day. My dad, who passed away, was a deputy sheriff, so I'm very close to law enforcement. But when I ran this second time, I was in a room just like this, full of people. It was a big homeowners association. In the back of the room was a policeman and a fireman, a couple of them, in their just like golf shirts, police association. And they just stood there and they just looked at us up there on the dais talking. And there's all the candidates speaking. And so, again, I just couldn't shut up. I had to say, we love our police, we love our fire, but this is unsustainable. And they took that as an absolute attack on them. And all I was talking to them was about the math. You can't retire people at 50 years of age at 90%, or I could argue 98% of their pay, which goes up 2% a year. They have an increase, and somehow be sustainable. You can't do it. The person makes $100,000, you pay them 90, they go up 2% a year. It's craziness. And with what's happening with how long people are living, you have some people that are going to get pensions longer than they worked. So just do the math. It's not too hard to figure out. So we have a situation, and it's happened at the federal government also in other ways, where we, again, don't want to say no. We want to make everybody happy. We don't want to get in a fight, and you just want to get elected. When you say no, and I just came back last night from Stanford University. The Hoover Institute invited myself and a couple other elected officials, the mayor from San Jose, Chuck Reed, who's doing some big work up there with regards to pension reform, and another council person from San Jose. And we spoke in a room of like 30 people of all, lawyers and retired judges and people working on the pension problem. But the reality of it is that you can figure the math out, and there's ways to going through the court system and cities going bankrupt and all sorts of issues. The reality of it is you have to get people elected. And it's almost impossible. Devin Dwyer, my friend right here, was on the council in Huntington Beach. He was there for 4 years. Devin said, we have a pension problem, and the person that took his seat is a retired police officer. He got kicked out, and an active police officer from LA City, was it, is now on the council. Now, I got to tell you, when you hire people that get pensions, I don't care if they're next door or whatever, on your city council, it's over. They not only will not say no, they believe they deserve the money. So the hardest thing for the public to do is to understand, to respect the people that work in government, but to say the truth. I completely respect our police. I completely respect our fire people. But you cannot... I'll just give you an example. One of my neighbors, lieutenant, retired at the age of 50. He was given 2 years of service credit to retire early, which is another stupid thing that government does. I will pay you to leave early. Why? And I'm talking real money they paid him, not like little bit. And they gave him 2 years of service credit, so he shows he had 30 years of working there. He was 50 years old. His pension was $162,000 a year. He's now 52. By the time he's 62, his pension is $201. When he turns 80, his pension is over $300,000. Okay, that's a done deal. There's nothing to renegotiate there. That's a person who got a pension. That's when you hear about these unfunded liabilities that we have, and I don't want to bore you with it. The numbers are outrageous. So give me an idea of what cities people are in here. We got Newport, anybody from Newport, Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, Rancho Santa Margarita, Irvine, okay. Those cities are on the same boat that we're in. Their city councils just don't want to admit it, to tell you what the numbers are. So in our city of Costa Mesa, we have $250 million unfunded pension liability. $250 million. And that comes out to $468,000 per employee. $500,000 an employee. Now, the thing about what's an unfunded liability, so let me just give you some magnitudes here. And I don't want to bore you with the numbers, but you got to have some basic numbers to understand it. Before we did this big push to pensions to give people 90% of pay at 50, our city was spending about 5% of its budget on pensions. Still a substantial amount of money. So a $100 million budget, spend about $5 million a year. Go 10, 12 years forward, our budget shot up, and our budget came back down again. We went from 650 employees to 480 employees. We dropped a couple hundred employees. We were 5%, right? 5 million. We're now close to 20% at $20 million a year of our budget for 200 people less. And CalPERS, the group in the state who handles our pension, tells us it will go up 50% in the next 5 years. So we'll go from 20% of our budget to 30% of our budget. Okay, why does that matter to people? It's crowding out everything else city government does for you. And so what happens is that cities simply can't afford to replace roads, streets, parks. The money's simply not there. The cities that are the weakest will file bankruptcy. We've already seen 3 cities file bankruptcy. No city is immune from this problem. It's too big. So I don't care if you're in Newport Beach or in Irvine or somewhere else that thinks, we got a lot of money here, we're fine. This monster eats up money at a rate that nobody can believe. Remember I told you, a person's 80 years old, $300,000 a year. Now that's a lieutenant, and a regular police officer is going to retire at $100,000 a year. The average cost of a police officer in our city, with the pension cost put in there, is about $175,000 a year per employee. That's what these costs have done to us. So there's a massive crowding out everywhere. Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, we joke about it, but as far as an actual program to like replace streets and curbs and gutters, I don't know, 15 years has it been? I mean, they just simply aren't doing it. It's not getting done. And what is your city supposed to do for you? Now, cities like Irvine, people that were in Irvine over here, you're insulated in part of a way from some of those things because you simply have homeowners associations and you pay. You're just taxing yourself already to pay for your streets and your local streets and all that, and you're just already paying for it in there. But the rest of your city's pensions, those issues don't go away. Whether you have the Orange County Fire Authority is doing your fire, which Irvine has, they're still paying those kind of pensions. So those dollars continue to add up. When I got on the council and I went through these issues from the political side, it's amazing what people will do when their money's on the line in these campaigns. When I ran for office, remember I was supposed to just keep my mouth shut, and I didn't. A couple days after this, I'm forgetting if it was before or after, but anyways, we had an issue where I was coming home in the evening about 5:30, 6 o'clock, got off at Harbor Boulevard, and the freeway was all backed up at the off-ramp. Couldn't figure out why. When I got up off of Harbor Boulevard, right there at the freeway, we had a DUI checkpoint. Now, if you understand what a DUI checkpoint is, you know, Mothers Against Drug Drivers are all for it, and we should do all these checkpoints. Some of us are more libertarian, think we have some problems with, you know, just everybody drives by, you check them out, or every third person, whether it's legal, but you know, is that the kind of society we want to have where you're checking cars as they go by? With that all being said, what are we doing at a checkpoint at 6 o'clock on a Thursday at the freeway off-ramp, where the freeway off-ramp is being backed up, where cars are almost hitting each other, because, you know, the off-ramp is backed up into the freeway. Instead of just driving home, of course, I waited, and I got through, and I pulled over, and I went over to see the police officers, and I said, you know, we need to do something here. Now, I didn't remember exactly what I said at the time, but it wasn't that big of a deal, and I went home and ended up going to the high school football game. The next day, I got a call from the reporter. The reporter said, "What happened yesterday, Jim?" And I said, "Well, nothing." He said, "Well, no, you know, yesterday." I go, I don't know what happened yesterday. He said, "The DUI checkpoint." I go, "Oh, that? Yeah, I talked to the officers, and I left." Now, I wasn't happy when that moment was. I was a half hour waiting. I was tense. I was a bit upset probably, so I wasn't exactly sure what I said. But I'm usually pretty good at watching my words. And he said, "Well, 4 officers came in here and told us that you pulled out your planning commissioner badge and said, 'I'm chairman of the planning commission, shut down this DUI checkpoint.'" And I'm thinking, he said, "Did you say that?" Now, you never lie to a reporter. So one thing you don't do. And I'm saying to myself, I don't remember saying that. I might have said some of those words, but it wasn't that. And I remember telling him I was chairman of the planning commission, because you don't go to a municipal employee and not say you're on a committee or something, because it's not fair to them to just go ahead and kind of like sneak up on them and then come back and say, "Oh, that was the chairman of the commission." But we had issues with traffic, and I had meetings that morning about it, and what are we doing closing off an off-ramp on a freeway for a DUI checkpoint at 6 o'clock? Now, the fact that it's a federally government program that's only there for overtime, it's paid for completely by overtime by the federal government, is a whole other story. I would argue if checkpoints were great, we should just do them on regular time. What's the problem? Do them all the time. It just so happens they like them because they're overtime and the federal government gives us the money for it. But what happened from that point on is the labor unions came after me strong. I mean hard. And they were at all the city council meetings saying, you know, this commissioner should be taken off. He should have been arrested. He was impeding with the police. We got a report coming out. They're going to get a report done. And what they do in politics is they never finish the police report. A week go by, 2 weeks go by. Their city council people call about how disgusting this Mr. Reigheimer is, and he should be thrown off immediately, and he should resign from his post. After about 4 weeks with no police report, the city attorney finally released the digital recordings that they had of me out there. And I was on the tape, and what did I say? You know, "I know, officer, you're just doing your job, but this is a problem with the traffic issue. We need to meet. Let me give you my business card. We'll set up for a meeting." I didn't say anything bad at all. And they knew I didn't say anything bad, but they wanted to hold it as long as they could. And then they were going to say, well, before our tape recorders got turned down. By the way, there was 4 tape recorders. But all it was me being very calm talking. The other part that I knew was wrong was when they said I pulled out my badge and said I was the chairman of the planning commission. We don't have badges. So understand now, I'm with people, and my brother's a police officer. I'm with police officers who carry guns and wear bulletproof vests, who swear to tell the truth, went to a reporter and said I pulled out a badge. Forget about what he said, I said. I pulled out a badge and did it. That's the kind of game that we're in, that they will take you out of office. They will do whatever it takes. So what I talked about yesterday at Stanford was, forget all the math. How do you keep people elected in office who are willing to say the right things and do the right things in a respectful way and keep them in there? Because you're just against, you want crime and you don't want to have good police and you want secondhand fire people. No, I don't want that. I got a wife and 3 kids there. Of course I want the best. But as a business person, I know what it costs to get the best, or what we should pay for something, or how competitive it should be. If you have 4,000 people sign up for one job, I think you're paying enough. You might be able to even lower that. Who knows? And with police officers, it's a little tougher to get them. Maybe you got to pay a little more. Who knows? But it's not just give me more, because we can, and politically we can do it. To be on a city council where you go into closed session to negotiate, and people in that room have been put there by the labor unions, think about it. I'm in there negotiating in a closed session with 2 people that got put there by the unions that says, I want whatever I want. In Devin's case, one of them is a police officer from another city. There's just, so when they say you negotiated a deal with us, you agreed to something, what do you mean we agreed to something? The citizens of Costa Mesa or Huntington Beach or Irvine? No. The people you put in office did, or the people you took out. In our city and in most cities, more money is spent on campaigns by the local employee unions than all the citizens in the city combined. Think about that. $300,000-$400,000 is spent by the associations or the unions, and you might raise $100,000, $50,000, $75,000, whatever, from residents in the city. It's obvious why it is. If you're in any organization and you could vote for who your boss is going to be, it matters to you. The money matters to you. So it's different in how it comes together. Later on, throughout that, I've stood my ground as far as pension and pay, and we've had a lot of issues in the city, and people are always interested when they meet me. They think I'm like the Darth Vader, or the Lord of the Dark, because of how tough I happen to be, and I'm just a dad with a wife and 3 kids at home that just says enough's enough. We have to do what's right, and I respect everybody who works in our city. I mean, these are good people, but we have to come into a relationship of what is sustainable, what can people afford. About a year ago was when we thought things were calming down, is to give you the length at which things can be done. When you're negotiating contracts, one of the things that they'll always ask for is, we want to just be the median pay of anybody else in the county. Sounds pretty logical, and if you're just a city council person who's elected, they go, you want to be the median pay? Yeah, we don't want to be high. We don't want to be low. We just want to be the median pay. Are there any lawyers in the room here? Anybody? Okay. The median pay can be defined as anything you want it to be. The median pay can be the highest. Just define the word median. It could be, we'll take these 5 cities around you, and we're going to throw out the high one, and we're not going to count this one. And they have all these definitions of what median is. But here's what we know what it means, is that once you agree to have in your contracts median pay based on some formula, the city council has just handed away the right to negotiate a contract for how much they pay. The city of Vallejo had in their contract, Vallejo filed bankruptcy a few years ago, had in their contract, and they were in Central Valley, but they weren't San Francisco. They had in their contracts that their firemen had to be paid the same as the people in San Francisco got paid. So some little town with the average family's making $54,000, you're paying firemen $150,000. They filed for bankruptcy. So when you're doing these contracts and you're looking at this pay, you have to look at what is it and how do they come up with these bizarre numbers of median pay. I was the one who just said we're not doing that anymore. It sounds logical to go ahead and say median pay, but it means nothing. And the only groups I ever see to get studies done of what someone's pay should be, really, is public employees and CEOs who want to make $100 million a year. They get some study to say why they're worth $100 million a year. It's just ridiculous. They aren't, I don't know, but it's just a way to cover everybody's political side from when you go ahead and approve those kind of dollars in a city. But what I talked about yesterday was we had a campaign happening for 2 of the people on the council. This is the other thing on a council. There's a lot of people before me, Devin included, who've been on councils who believe the same way I believe, but they could never get a majority. The only reason Costa Mesa is on the national news is because we have a majority to do what we want to do. And we just went through another election cycle and kept the majority, which is unusual. Usually they can knock somebody out. They will drag out any process, the labor unions will, to knock somebody else out. And we were able to get through it. But during this last election cycle, so this is about a year ago, we had an issue in a part of town, and it was part of what I call the playbook. There's a playbook by a law firm out there. The law firm's name is Lackey, Denmar, McGill, and Ether. You don't have to remember their name. Just remember that this law firm represents 130 police officer associations in the state. So now when you start to understand about, we just want to be the median pay, they're at a level of chess you don't even know you're negotiating. You're a little city council not realizing the people outside of you are negotiating for 130 cities and time everything else up, that median pay is just going up. And how they define median pay in one city is different than it's defined in another city, and they know the timing of all the contracts, and all of a sudden your city manager says, oh, by the way, we have a 7% raise we just gave. Why? Median pay went up, you're required to do it. Well, we don't have the money. Doesn't matter, it's in the contract. You agreed to a formula of something else over there. So now you find out that a law firm represents 130. This law firm and their website says we're very aggressive in protecting our association. Aggressive is the key word. That's the key word, aggressive. You start to find out what aggressive means. So a little over a year ago, after this neighborhood event, they had some issues where people said, there's not enough police and we don't feel safe. Well, that's right out of the playbook. The playbook says, for the associations, when you're going into negotiation, just have people come up to the city council, say, I don't feel safe, we had crime in our neighborhood, crime's going up, you don't care. I'm unsafe and you don't care. Which it basically is code for, we need more police officers and you better pay them more to get good ones. And it's part of the playbook. Also in the playbook it says, don't ever attack a whole city council, don't attack a bunch of people, attack one person at a time, and go after them, go after them, go after them, and when you get their allegiance, go after the next victim. This isn't a document on a website for this law firm. So you can look up the Lackey Denmar's playbook. Orange County Register did a story on it. It started happening at a city council meeting. I told those people, you know what, we'll solve your problem tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I'll be there with the city manager, the chief of police, the fire, code enforcement. We're going to solve all these problems. And the problems they had really were there were some motels and they have pimps and prostitutes and those issues. And so we took care of it. When I left, I went over to one of the councilmen has a restaurant, Scotia Monaghan's, and I went over there. It was about 4:30. It was hot. And I sat down. I had a couple of Diet Cokes. And didn't think much about it. Another council person was there. I left. I went home. When I got home, I saw the kids. They were doing their homework and my wife. And they said, there's a police officer down the street. And I go, oh, okay, no big deal. And I'm in the house, and the next thing I hear, my wife says, there's a police officer at the door. So I go to the front door, and he says, Mr. Reigheimer, Councilman Reigheimer? I said, yes. And can you step outside? Well, when you hear the words, can you step outside, there's a problem. Now, every one of you could stay in your house. Okay, I'm an elected official. I stay in my house. It's up on the websites in 10 seconds for every newspaper. Reigheimer held up in his house, won't come out. What is he trying to hide? But I knew I had to come out, and I went out, and I asked him what it was, and he said, well, we had a report that you were driving erratically. I said, really? He said, yep, and you need to do a test. I'm already home. I'm now out of my house, and I need to do a test. And I'm standing there with my wife and kids watching me doing a sobriety test. Beyond embarrassing, it's shocking that as an elected official I'm being pulled out of my house to do this. And of course I passed the test. I didn't have anything to drink. But I came out of a bar, remember? It was a restaurant and a bar. I go in the house, I say, something's wrong here, honey, something's wrong. I do something else. She says, the police officer is now talking to somebody at the end of the block. And I said, I've been set up. And I ran down that street. The officer was talking to somebody in a four-door white Kia. And I said, who is that? Who is that? And the officer says, well, I don't know. We don't know. I said, no, I'm on the council. I'm being set up. Who is that? Well, we don't know. And the officer asked me to kind of walk away, so I moved over to the side, and the car shot by. And now you have to know who my wife is. My wife is a beautiful 6-foot-tall Dane, and she's about had it now. We've had enough problems with campaigns and the mud they dragged me through during campaigns, but now you've brought it to our house and our kids. My wife, unbeknownst to me, stepped out in front of that car and stopped it as it came by our house. And he rolled down to the window, and he said, "What do you want?" She goes, "I just want to know who you are." I mean, if somebody thought I was, a DUI, you could dial 911, and it was a mistake, you'd say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I thought it was," and you'd leave. You don't race away to get away from there. And she saw it, and it was a four-door white Kia with no license plate. And it left. It shot past her, and out the car almost hit her. I immediately, once I got in the house, I called the city manager. I called the chief. I said, "Lock up those tape recorders." See, I know about the tape recorders. They got them now because remember it happened to me before? There's tape recorders that all of our police officers have. I said, "Lock down those tape recorders. I've been set up. Something's going on here." 2 days later, I had a press conference. Once I had the press conference, my phones lit up from city council people throughout Southern California who have been extorted by their own police departments. By people, in fact, one city manager called me and said, "You know what? I had a four-door white Kia follow me a year ago for 3 days." I said, "Oh, well, I wish we could have some proof, that would help with this investigation." He goes, "Proof? I turned in a police report a year ago." I go, "Really?" Now, he could never come public because he's a city manager and he's trying to get another job in another city. And a lot of these cities, the police organizations run these cities, run by this one law firm. And so that happened and happened. About 8 hours later, I got a call from a reporter saying, "We've tracked down the person who it was," because they got the 911 tapes. And it's a great 911 tape, by the way. The guy could have won an Academy Award. I mean, he's on for 10 minutes following me, saying I'm swerving, I'm going through stop signs. I mean, it was just crazy. And if somebody had just heard that, later on, you could guarantee it would have come up during my next campaign, right? It would have been, well, Reigheimer was out driving drunk. And they found out who the person was. He was a fired police officer from the city of Riverside. He was the president of their police officer association previously. He worked for the law firm that represents our police officers. You can put it together really fast. Our police officer association, it's alleged that our police officer association hired this law firm to hire somebody to get something on me. As you get farther into the story and weeks go by and reporters call people, it turned out that I wasn't the target. The actual target was the two councilmen who were running at that time. And this now private investigator, police officer, said to the Orange County Register, "You know what, I wasn't there for Reigheimer. We were there to follow these other two council people." They had sent a woman into the restaurant to get the councilman to do something inappropriate. This woman comes in at 4:30, low-cut dress, the whole thing. And basically, what you've got here is a situation where you're learning to extort city council people. This happens throughout Southern California. So, going back to why do we have pensions and everything that's outrageous? Well, they can cajole you and tell you you're a good guy and you're for law enforcement and all that, and you give it to them. Or they could help you get in office, or they kick you out. But if they can't get your vote in the end, they've got those pictures of you with some woman. They say, "Well, is that your wife?" Extortion works because it's probably true. But what this investigator said was that his comment was he had never seen the TV show Cheaters. Big deal. We're out there setting up elected officials for what? Now, we filed a lawsuit a few weeks ago. Here's the good news. The law firm, which was the largest law firm in the state of California representing Police Officers Association, within 3 weeks collapsed. The firm shut down. It no longer exists. They're still on the hook, personally, the lawyers there for what they did. But we have a situation that I think we're starting to turn the tide on what's really happening in the dirty politics in all cities with regards to these outrageous contracts that everybody who reads them goes, "Why would you ever agree to that?" It's because there are people that will do things that are illegal to get those things done. The good news is that firm is gone. We're moving forward with our litigation to make sure that stops there. But with all that on our back in the city of Costa Mesa, we went from going through $35 million in a 3-year period of our reserves. In the last 3 years since I've been on, we not only balanced the budget. This last year we had a $7.5 million surplus, and we spent $40 million on roads, 10 times what had ever been spent in the last 10 years. We spent in 2 years. And so Costa Mesa, by the end of March, will have 25% of its roads and curbs redone in the city and there. So you can get there from here, but what I need you to keep your eyes open to is when that council person is running, and then they're backed up by the police and fire, that's not a good thing. They're good people. They're okay. There's no reason at all for public employee groups to be involved in local city council elections. None. And when they're involved in there, they're looking for something. And it's all about money. You need to look for the candidates out there that aren't tainted by that. They just say, thank you very much, but you're an employee of the city, and I think employees of the city shouldn't be giving me money for my campaign or an endorsement. And I think once people understand that, we're going to see more and more cities turn, and I know it's happening. The bad things is we lose someone like a Devin, but I think over time, more and more city councils and the public will understand. If the public understands, we're going to get through this issue. So.